Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for June 12th, 2019. We have a roll call, please.
Chair Kurth.
Here.
Vice Chair Marsh.
Here.
Commissioner Wells.
Present.
Commissioner Huber.
Here.
Commissioner Harriman.
Here.
Thank you. Next, we'll have the invocation and the led to us by Commissioner Huber, and the Pledge of Allegiance led to us by Commissioner Harriman.
Heavenly Father, we gather to make decisions for our community. May we use partial and neutral.
We have a set of minutes to deal with from the May 8th, 2019 meeting.
Chairman Kurtz, I move to approve the regular meeting of May 8th.
I second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Huber with a second by Commissioner Wells to approve the minutes of the May 8, 2019 regular Planning Commission meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start out with agenda item number 1. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Chairman Kurth, fellow commissioners. Item number 1 is case PLAN 19-00010. It is a plan unit development modification to PUD 1-89 with an environmental exemption to allow for an updated development standards, generally including fencing, recreational space, setbacks, and building height within the Cypress Point community. The applicant is LGI Homes, and this is located north of Desert Poppy Lane and south of Rancho Road. The applicant is investing in a development, as you can see on your screen, that was partially built during the last decade. There's approximately exactly 163 lots left in the community. They're proposing to modify the PUD to allow for the continuation of vinyl fencing throughout the site, also increasing the building height from 25 feet to 30 feet. They're also requesting that the completion of the park and the landscape maintenance improvements along Rancho Road be postponed until the 100th and 11th occupancy, which is the third phase of development. Staff has reviewed the proposal and is recommending that the Planning Commission approve this and recommend the PUD modification to the City Council. And staff's available if you have any questions.
Thanks. Any questions from commissioners of staff?
Yeah. He wants to hold back till the 111th lot before he does the landscape on the perimeter, and he's going to have to do the maintenance with weed growth and those kind of things, and I just think it should get landscaped right away with the beginning of the project. and I would think that he would be concerned with curb appeal to sell the lots anyways. So I think the landscape, the LMAD should be done upon starting the project.
Any other questions? Or I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is the applicant or representative? Hello.
Good evening, Commissioners. Bo Cooper, Entitlement Manager for United Engineering Group. I'm also here on behalf of LGI Homes, who, with scheduling conflicts, regrets they don't have a rep here themselves. But I want to thank staff as well for rattling through this as quick as possible to get some of these modifications addressed to move forward and allow some continuity to the to the development of this. With some of the updates of a lot of the standards that we've put into code, which are all good. Primarily I think the vinyl fencing was the biggest issue, having block walls butting up to existing vinyl fencing, and vinyl fencing that would then turn into a block wall. It would look kind of hodgepodgey through this development. We have coordinated with the HOA as well. That is for this site for most of this process. As far as the landscaping goes, I think you're correct. We were putting some language together as far as what to hold them to that says the landscaping must be done by this point. Their model complexes are in that north west corner off of Rancho Road. The landscaping is obviously going to be done along Rancho Road for a lot of that model complex. There are updates that need to be done. The landscape plans for that area were approved. I don't remember the date on them, but it was over 10 years ago, and there are updates that need to be done to that landscape plan, so they are also processing a lot of those landscape plan updates. So I think kind of the goal was to allow the model complex to move forward and allow everything to kind of keep going while they got some of these other plan updates brought up to speed and approved, and essentially puts them on the hook to get all of that landscaping done by the 111th C of O. They have every intention of doing it before then. That goes for the park as well.
That was a good question. But just to be clear, it would be at phase 3 primarily, right? Is when that would trigger for landscape.
Correct. Which is also put on there, especially for the park, because they won't own the park until that phase.
So if we could throw up exhibit attachment C. See that? It looks like it has the three different color coded phases. Purple is phase 3. So that's when the LMAD landscaping would come in, I believe. And so we're really only talking the lots on the corner are model homes, so those are going to be looking nice, I'm sure. So it would just really pretty much be the blue stuff down towards the end of Rancho Road. 2 lots, maybe, is what we're talking, that we would out on. Looking at that right?
Yeah, so there's only actually 3 lots that phase 3 would front Rancho Road. But yeah, it's like I stated in the workshop that our code requires that these improvements our current code requires these improvements to be installed up front. They weren't installed up front, obviously, with this original PUD. And the developer is requesting some timing, like Bo said, they need to update landscape plans, and they're kind of already starting to pursue their building permits. So to tie it to the first phase may become an issue, but What about the second phase, Bose? Do you think by the 56th occupancy you would have the LMAD in place?
The LMAD? Well, I mean, and the LMAD is in place. It exists. The LMAD's recorded. The easements and from the block wall easements, all of that is done. It's the plans and the construction of a lot of that landscaping. Yeah, and again, the LMAD is in place, so yeah, the right of way in the area along Rancho Road is obviously already there. That's not an ownership thing, quite like the park was. I think it was easy and a little more organized to have everything, the park and everything, kind of tied to the same condition. It's easy to manage and make sure everything is done and approved and moved forward by then. Like I said, there's every intention of getting all of this done well before that. That was just kind of the drop dead that we established in talking with staff. So,
well, it looks like there's just only if the landscaping was not installed within the LMAD until the beginning of phase 3, there would only be 3 lots that were missing the landscaping back there, kind of in the north corner.
Well, I would still like to see those done. I mean, that would be extremely easy to do those while landscaping the models. And like I said, you're still going to have landscape maintenance. Like the rain this year brought all the weeds.
right.
You have to maintain that anyways. So I would like the LMAD to be installed with the models. I think that's fair. It's not that.
Questions for Mr. Cooper? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak to us on agenda item number 1? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and I'll bring it back to the commission for any further discussion and a determination. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll open the public hearing up again, if you'd like to come speak to us. If you could just give us your name and address for the record, since we didn't get a card.
My name is Paula Irvin, E-R, V as in Victor, I-N, and I live at 16732 Ukiah Street in Cypress Point. And I don't think that having the block fencing is going to look very good when we have existing vinyl fencing, especially on the lots in the front where the vinyl fencing is already installed. And it might even look to divide our community, like people might think that they're not part of our community if they have block walls and we have vinyl fencing. And I want to see all those homes built because I'd like to see my property value go back up to what it was when I bought in 2007. So I would like everything possible to make that happen, and I don't think that the
Comments? Sure.
George Burney, 15879 Barrel Cactus Lane, Victorville. I live in the community. I've been there for about 8 years, and I'm just concurring what my neighbor is saying. Basically, I live in an HOA for a reason, and the reason is they keep things uniformal. They keep the peace between the neighbors, and above all, things looks the same, look uniformal. If you have most of the houses have a vinyl fences, and then some other house is going to have the brick walls and all that, that's not uniform at all. And that's literally, like she said, it's going to divide the neighborhood basically, and it's not going to look good. So I'm just concurring what she's saying basically.
Okay.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak to us on item number 1? Yes.
Michelle Medina, 16627 Desert Willow Street. Basically, same thing. It would be to make a builder, for one, I'm not siding with the builder, but to make them put block wall, and you have some empty lots that are next to the vinyl fencing, it's not going to look right. It's a very, very active community. There's a lot of people that get involved in community events. I myself also am still waiting for my value to come up to what it was in 2006 when I bought it. And I don't see that happening, and I would hate for a builder who's only purchased right now 55 lots, and it's gone from builder to builder to builder. It's been sold multiple times. If they were to only build the 55 houses and jump ship, that would leave us with less assessments. That would leave us, again, half-built or less than half-built. We have a park that we're waiting for the community to be 70% built for them to put in to add to our community that the city doesn't pay for because the HOA maintains. If you guys were to make it more difficult, it would be extremely hard for a builder to come in and pick up, because we've been through this for many, many years with different builders. So basically, we're just asking basically if you can work, and it was already a PUD. And it should stay exactly the same, because now we would have to pay money to change our CCNRs, our rules and regs, because we have vinyl fencing in there. We don't have block walls. And that just wouldn't be fair for the rest of the owners that live there. And basically, I'm just asking for you guys' consideration on it, because we've worked back and forth with the city on a lot of things, and we're trying to basically just do what's right.
Thank you. Sir.
Hi, I'm Eric Groves, 16594 Desert Willow Street. And I just had a question. I was just curious if the building is going to, I know you put up diagrams and maps, but it's just a tiny bit unclear to me. Will there be houses built along Desert Willow continuing up to Rancho? I was just a little unclear. I just wanted to know that.
Scott, could you address that?
Yes, that's actually part of their phase 1 development. But
okay.
Yeah, in the graphic above, anything that's within that red site area that has, the vacant lot is planned to be built out.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was just my question.
Thank you. Anyone else on item number 1?
Good afternoon. My name is Dana Smith from 15723 Desert Poppy Lane, and I've been a resident here for several years, and this is also my permanent address, and I believe that the vinyl fencing should be kept rather than the concrete fencing to, as my neighbors have said, and to echo what they've said, for uniformity's sake. Being in an HOA, I believe it's about bringing the community together. And if there isn't a sense of physical uniformity, then there could possibly be a divide within the community and within HOA guidelines as well. We already have a community separate from our HOA, and there's a clear divide there. So with these concrete fencing, it's only going to bring about a bit of confusion when new residents start to come in, and they're going to wonder, are they part of the HOA? What is the HOA going to do for us, for me? And I believe there should be a very uniformity between all of the fencing, just for physicality's sake. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing no one, then I will close the public hearing on number 1. And just to be clear, the staff report is making a recommendation for the vinyl fence, correct?
Correct. Your action today, if you were to approve this modification, would be a recommendation to the city council. then the city council would ultimately adopt or take final action on the PUD modification.
And the resolution has that modification written in it as vinyl, as the staff recommendation.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
As it stands, yes. Discussion or questions?
So the owner only owns the first.
Correct. It's my understanding that they have an option to purchase the remaining 2 phases, probably due to financing purposes, but they do currently own the phase 1. So as they build that out, they'll eventually acquire the following phases.
That kind of is my thing. If he parts, then the LMAD doesn't get done. I just think done with the construction of the models.
It was my understanding that the developer was saying that they weren't going to develop the landscaping until the park got put in, which is in phase 3. And if that is my understanding, and they're only owning phase 1, then maybe they should go ahead and put in all of the landscaping now, because who knows what's going to happen with phase 2 and 3 when 3 includes the park.
Yeah, the commission, where our municipal code's set up, the planning commission has the discretion here on when these improvements are required. So you could leave it at what the applicant's proposing and wait until absolutely requiring it by the 3rd phase. The applicant seems like they're going to be installing some of it up front, but the requirements set forth right now would only hold that 111th occupancy, and anything beyond that until the park and the LMAD is complete. You have the ability to allow to keep the park at the 100th and 11th occupancy. You can move the LMAD up. There's definite flexibility on when the planning commission can recommend that.
Okay, so there's been some discussion on the LMAD improvement. Do we have a motion with or without that?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that the LMAD get done with the model homes.
I second.
To clarify, would you go ahead and make that with the total recommendation that's set forth here, or are you just trying to clarify that portion of it? Are you recommending approval on the total application with that modification, or are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So my motion is to approve with the modification that the LMAD landscaping gets done with the model homes.
And you're approving the environmental assessment and the resolution P19022 as a whole?
Correct.
With that modification?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Harriman with a second by Commissioner Wells to approve case PLAN 19-00010 with the added modifications to recommend for City Council approval. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Just to clarify on that, what I'm understanding is that prior to the final of the model homes, all of the installation of the LMAD, the complete stretch of Rancho Road that fronts this property would be installed. Is that
My understanding too.
Okay.
And just to be clear for the audience, this resolution we just passed does not require block or concrete walls. It requires vinyl fencing similar to what's existing, correct? And thank you all, the residents of Cypress Point, for coming out. I love to see people involved in their community and the care that you have in that area. Thank you for coming out tonight.
There are portions of it that are already constructed. What is not constructed is what fronts Rancho Road. So that'll be completed out. So they'll have landscaping in between the block wall and the street. Correct. That's part of the current assessment, correct? I'd probably have to have you talk with our public works administration who looks over the LMADs, but my understanding is that LMAD is already formed, and it includes the existing and the proposed lots to be built on. So it would be, yeah, if you're part of the HOA currently in that's part of your LMAD as well. So it's not currently installed.
And Scott, and just so everyone's aware, this commission is not aware of what historically has happened or what it might look at in certain parts. So I would encourage you to, and I'm sure they would be happy to talk to you, and reach out to staff with some of those questions of quality of maintenance, any of those kind of things you've brought up, because we couldn't really do that right now. Thank you so much. Agenda item number 2, please.
As Chairman, Planning Commissioners, agenda item number 2, PLAN 19-00012 is a site plan and conditional use permit with an environmental exemption to allow for the construction of a 65-foot tall wireless communication facility and accessory equipment. And it's located at 12725 3rd Avenue at an existing church site. The applicant has justified the need for the tower, as well as justifying the height of the pine tree tower. And the city will also get additional street improvements with this development. Please note the added written comments you've received tonight. Staff recommends approval and is available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on agenda item number 2. Is the applicant or representative here? Welcome.
Good evening, Chairman. I'm Chuck Saunders, representative of AT&T.
You have any questions for us?
No. Scott, the planners have been open and been working well with them, so I don't have no questions from my end.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak to us on item number 2? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing on item number 2 and bring it back to the commission.
Chairman Kurtz, we had one write-in that was against the project, but I'll find the project category exempt per CEQA section 15.3.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Huber with a second by Commissioner Harriman to approve case PLAN 19-00012 as conditioned. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, and good luck with the project.
Chairman Kurtz, on item number 3, I am part of that.
Okay. Agenda item number 3, staff report, please.
I want to state my expert communication. I spoke with the upon doing a visual of the property. I had a conversation with the manager of the ranch.
Thank you. We just kind of started doing this and getting more in the habit. Do you think that we would need to say any more details, or is that sufficient in your opinion?
I think we need to disclose that you made a site visit, what you observed, and then maybe a quick, a brief summary of your conversation with the what was it, a property owner or someone on the site? I mean, it doesn't need to be detailed. The issue is whether or not engaging in those particular activities predisposes you one way or another to the point where you're unable to fairly make a decision.
Well, the context was I was just doing a visual, and she actually drove up to me and said, "What are you doing?" So I just gave her my business card and told her I was doing a visual, and rated that the owner, Mr. Campbell, I believe Scott Campbell, out of the area and would not be attending.
Anything you saw there make you lean one way or another?
No, absolutely not.
Great. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Chairman Kurth. Commissioners, item number 3 is case PLAN 19-00018. Is a tentative parcel map with an environmental exemption to allow for the creation of 4 parcels from one existing 28-acre parcel. This is located east of 11th Street, south of D Street, and southeast of and abutting the Victor Valley Memorial Park. The proposal, as seen here, would split an existing lot into 4 parcels. Parcel 1 that fronts 11th Street would maintain its PC public civic zoning designation, while the remaining 3 lots would stay as exclusive agriculture. This would allow for crops, cattle, also the development of up to a single-family home. So very low-density type of development at the site. The proposal meets all development standards, and staff recommends approval as conditioned.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing for agenda item number 3. Anyone here to speak to us on number 3? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
I second that.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Marsh with a second by Commissioner Wells to approve case PLAN 19-00018 as conditioned. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I'm sorry. Motion carries with Commissioner Huber absent from the dais.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 4. I see from our staff report that we're not quite ready to make any final determinations on any of these ordinances, but to my understanding, the staff is asking the commissioners some input on a couple of the issues on the pending code ordinances.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Chair Kurth. We did want to bring this item before you as we, work out the complexities and iron out a code that we're ready to present to you. And we wanted to get your feedback on two items. First, the vending ordinance that we are preparing mainly is addressing new legislation, Senate Bill 946, which regulates vending on the public sidewalk and from a vehicle upon a street. This is new state legislation which prohibits cities from outright banning these type of activities. So part of the legislation allows for cities to regulate vending in certain areas if it's based on a health, safety, welfare issue. So with that, we wanted to kind of open it up for discussion with the commission to see if they had any particular area, time of day that would cause issue, that you can raise that now so we can either respond today or look into it further and draft the appropriate ordinance for your consideration. So before I go into the second item, maybe Commissioner Chair Kurth, if you want to open that up for discussion, and then we can move on to RV.
Yeah, we should, since you just gave us a little bit of an overview. Any thoughts or comments or any direction that that may help staff as they move forward with this issue?
Yeah, I actually have a few things. So I know we're kind of bound by the new California state law, but there's a few things that concern me, and that is the location. Well, let me put it this way. These are the things that I think it should require. The no parking on the street, and if there's not space available, existing space available on the street, and that could possibly obstruct visual traffic and cause an accident. I actually have met somebody who had property on a corner and was sued upon an accident because they said the trash enclosure on the property obscured the vision of the motorist. So that's one issue. The other thing is if they're going to be on a sidewalk, the sidewalk's going to have to be larger than the standard 5 to 6 feet, because they're going to need at least 4 feet to be in compliance with ADA for a handicapped person to get by. And I think it should require a permit from the city, a city business license to do the business, a certificate of general liability insurance, a certificate of workman's compensation insurance. I think just letting people set up and sell whatever they want wherever they want just isn't in the best interest of the city. And then if they're going to sell food, it's got to be regulated some way. Cleanliness and
I agree, but I'd like to just add, I've seen vendors near freeways and people exiting or entering a freeway where there's a sidewalk vendor. I think that should be a violation or not allowed, because it could back up traffic and definitely cause some type of 50 feet, 100 feet from an entrance of a freeway type of thing. And as long as, of course, the sidewalk is needed, but not near an entrance or exit of a freeway.
So that's kind of what we're doing, looking for locations where you can and cannot. I understand, the way I understand it, the freeway on and off ramps are by the state, so we may not have. That came up with the homeless issue. Walking up and down, I mean, I've seen people walking down the center divider, the median on Bear Valley Road, selling flowers. Okay? That's you know, I don't like that. Okay? On top of the fact we have plenty of florists in town that a lot of business because of that. These people don't stay stationary. They run out in the street at the traffic signal to sell stuff to people. I don't think that's acceptable. In fact, I'd like to see that be regulated. I don't know has any jurisdiction with that, but I actually would like to see something done about that because it gets pretty ridiculous on Bear Valley Road, Mariposa, Amargosa. On top of the fact there's no room there for a street vendor. There installed hundreds of ADA created by the state. Sidewalk that completely obliterates that because we don't have the 4 feet that's required to pass by with a wheelchair. So we have all this regulation by the state for that. But then at the same time, to say somebody could just set up something and obstruct the sidewalk, it is have it both ways. And if we're going to permit something like this, it's going to have to be in an area with a 10-foot sidewalk minimum, and to at least accommodate that problem. But
that's a good question too. Hey Brian, do you know typically what is the sidewalk width on, say, most of our major arterials or secondary arterials around town?
Our standard in a commercially zoned area is 10 feet. Although it's possible in some of the you will see in some of the older areas it's narrower, but the newer areas it's 10 feet. In residential, it's 6 feet. That's our standard.
And that would be like, let's pick La Mesa Road coming in through.
La Mesa Road, and when I say that, actually, you subtract 6 inches. So along La Mesa Road, it'd actually be, the width would be 5.5 feet. Okay, but for much of Bear Valley Road, not all of it, but adjacent to the commercial areas, it's mainly 9.5 feet. I'm not counting the top of the curb, so that's that would provide some excess room if there was a vendor there. But I would think on a 5.5 foot sidewalk that there just wouldn't be enough space.
Well, let me also point out Bear Valley Road doesn't have any parking, so add a way to 9.5, because we're deducting 6 inches for the curb, so a 9.5 foot sidewalk. But anybody stopping to buy anything is going to obstruct traffic. There's no way to stop and without shutting down a lane. So as an example, I would say that because of the street and the layout of the traffic lanes, that area would be not appropriate because there's nothing to accommodate stopping and purchasing. Somebody get rear-ended?
Possibly can of not
I'm not aware of a restriction
The
on the
legislation
number.
actually, sorry, I'll bring this closer, does, unless you really have some really beefed up findings in terms of health, safety, and welfare, you can't just have any fixed number. That's one of the limitations that that this will not permit. However, some of the other areas that you brought up and issues that you brought up, those are things that we can probably, and actually we did have a draft of it. We're just trying to fit it into the code. It's sort of a round peg in a square hole, so that's what's making it harder. But yes, there are certain distance requirements, that no one can vend here, no one can vend there, but it's very helpful to know, like 100 feet away from this driveway or that type of, ingress and egress point. But it's good to know the average length of certain sidewalks because that's a factor as well. So, you can't just say we can only have 100 vendors in the city, sidewalk vendors in the city, and that's it. That's not a regulation you can do. But if you can make it maybe in a certain area at a certain time. There are other cities, mainly ones that sort of stand out are like the beach cities where, they have certain types of municipal piers that have all sorts of access issues. And so they'll say, well, we can't, no one can, sidewalk vend here on, this type of event day and things like that. So you're looking at your health, safety, and welfare. So, maybe there are times when it would be okay to vend in a certain place and other times when it would be a really bad idea. And there's some places maybe where it's never safe to do it. For instance, like in a driveway. So yeah, those are the kind of things that we're looking for. Just some ideas as to, because we can think of certain things, but knowing the character and the makeup of the city is very helpful. Knowing that no one can actually park along Bear Valley Road, that's valuable information. And then are those medians that you were talking about, are they landscaped or they just have rocks or?
Bear Valley Road has rock, but.
Some are landscaped?
Some are landscaped, yeah.
Okay.
My other concern is as a contractor, whenever I do work in the city easement, I have to provide a certificate of insurance for workman's compensation and general liability. And I'm telling you, these people are going to block the vision of traffic. Somebody's going to get an accident. They're going to sue the city because the city let them be there. I've, like I said, I mentioned earlier, the trash enclosure at a certain place was, and this place has been there for 30 years, so the location of the trash enclosure wouldn't be up to code now, but because of where it was, it obstructed the view of the traffic. And I believe the lawyer ascertained quite a large amount of money from the city from that accident. And it's probably been 10 years from now, but that was the ground the lawyer was standing on is the city let him put it there, and it obstructed the view. You're on the hook. So I think the insurance is got to be mandatory. I don't think anything that's done in the city easement, in fact, that may already be the rules, has to have a certificate of insurance.
Yes, we were going to require insurance. Absolutely. That was.
And a business license.
License.
That pretty much.
I mean, there's also some cities have also adopted like a bunch of waivers, that you sign as well. So it's an extra layer on top of your insurance and any other requirements that you have when you make your business license application.
There was another issue that actually I was very passionate about 5 years ago, and I came in here numerous times about it, and that's people standing on the sidewalk twirling signs, "We buy gold," blah, 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 without a permit to do that. These people were throwing signs and twirling them. You can't read them because of that. Then the signs fall in the street. Do they carry insurance for a problem there? And should they be wearing a reflective vest? Anything on the sidewalk, on the city easement, that's going to. We don't allow signs. In other words, the guy with the liquor store can't bring a sign with Budweiser on sale and put it on the city sidewalk. So we have to be uniform with all of it. And I think anything done, whether it's commercial, a major arterial, or not, is going to have to jump through the hoops that to be fair and safe.
I'd like to add, if this were approved, could we eliminate particular streets, or like our main street, Bear Valley Road, which is such a busy street and would cause all these problems? Palmdale Road and 7th Street doesn't seem to be as busy a fairway, and there's room there. But, I mean, if we were to approve this, but could we restrict from being on any particular street within the cities? Using the example of Bear Valley.
Well, we'd have to base it off of the health, safety, and welfare issues.
Right, if you could make enough findings that supported that, because essentially what this says is that you're not, you can't, what they're trying to do with this legislation was, A, decriminalize sidewalk vending, and B, allow some folks to make a living without, being say herded into one area. That's really what they're trying to avoid here. Say, oh well, certainly you can vend on the sidewalk, but you can only do it 3 miles over here. Concentration type areas. But if we can, if we have enough, health, safety, and welfare concerns about a particular area, or even at a particular time, so maybe it would be okay to do it, at this hour, but not at that hour, or on weekends, but not on weekdays, or not during the rush hour. So, those are some of the minutiae that you're looking at, but if you're able to make the findings, it's possible. And the other thing to keep in mind, which we always have to, is this is new legislation. Folks are trying to adopt ordinances to deal with it. Nobody knows, what kind of challenges you might get or what a court is going to do. So it's, everybody's in uncharted waters here. So, if you can, the more information and facts you have, the better prepared you are to, restrict a certain area. I mean, basically, you need to have a good reason. It can't be because you don't care for sidewalk vendors, or maybe you don't like what they're selling. I mean, as long as they have their health permits, they've got their city permits, they've got their insurance. If they meet all of our requirements, then that's good. But there probably are some places where it is unsafe, and that's kind of what we're trying to, get a feel for those areas so we can make the findings.
Are they charging sales tax?
I think one of the other requirements, Scott, was that we're requiring them to show their seller's permit in order to get their license.
Right.
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying. If we're going to regulate with the license in the city to do it, they're going to have to charge sales tax also. So I don't see anywhere in the city that this should be allowed except maybe a dirt lot. That's it.
Which is essentially probably private property. And that's a whole different, it's a different ballgame.
Well, unless the city owns the easement frontage, actually the owner would own that until it's developed, and then they have to forfeit it to the city.
Yeah, so if you're saying that allowing it on a dirt lot, that's regulated in a separate section. So like through a temporary use permit, some of those events could be this or any type of event. That's handled separately.
Yeah, we have a bunch of different uses that kind of fall under vending. This one only speaks to what they call a sidewalk vendor.
What we're talking in the right of way, a public
that's probably a slightly different issue, but we're trying to hit them all, so we do appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah.
My question would be enforcement, because to me, you're going to have different categories of vendors. You're going to have the career, professional. What about the spare time? Ollies or whatnot, and out there and sells. code enforcement that's going to be going around. Spots, you know, every time that they pop up. As it's already stating in the legislation that really is hampering the scrutiny. Or, you know, the entrepreneurship or whatnot. So that would be my question. I mean, it's good to, you know, to require insurance.
Yeah, they would still, but they would be subject to the ordinance, whatever's put in place. So code enforcement still could enforce and take action against operating illegally. Hopefully through this too, we'll have some type of decal or something easily identifiable that they could put on their cart, their booth, whatever they have set up, that would show from the street, as you know, driving by could see that if they're legal.
Also, I would like to see them not in the residential areas. I live. They're on the corner, and again, it's a traffic issue because cars that are stopping to buy, you know, the strawberry.
Yeah, but I can appreciate that. Unfortunately, this particular bill, one of the things that it does is it restricts. You can't have a flat prohibition on sidewalk vending in a residential area, but only one type of sidewalk vendor is permitted to be in a residential area, and that would be someone that's called they call it a roaming. What they call a roaming sidewalk vendor. That's someone who doesn't have, they can only stop to make a transaction and they don't have a stationary area. And you can have reasonable hours on that as well, but you can't just have a flat prohibition, you know, in all residential areas. Certain areas you might be able to have some type of regulations if there were legitimate health, safety, and welfare, but it sounds like the kind of setup you're talking about would be a station, what they call a stationary sidewalk vendor. They made up all these terms, and some of the definitions aren't all that clear. So everybody's trying to make their own way. But yeah, so that you can prohibit, and that was one we were definitely considering is sticking with that, and also having, you know, you still have to look at a sidewalk, and you have to look at reasonable hours and what have you.
I think just requiring the insurance is going to eliminate quite a bit of it.
Yeah,
or they're going to be doing it illegally, and then they'd be subject to a citation of some type.
Yeah, but this legislation only permits administrative type fines, and then after a certain number of violations, their license can be revoked. It does decriminalize it, so you can't you can't make it a misdemeanor or infraction.
Right,
but there is a way to quote unquote police it.
Yeah, I might have misstated or made that sound. I'm not talking about anything criminal, but if you don't ascertain a business license in the city, and you're conducting business without that, the city can just shut you down, and they can fine you. I mean, it's not criminal. Obviously, they can fine you. Code enforcement fines, Walmart is getting fined.
There will definitely be fines. With as much as we can get in within the parameters of this, you know, and hopefully some legislation changes it a little, because I think some of it's a bit unworkable, but, you know, we're going to do the best we can.
Well, I find it, well, I shouldn't say I find it amazing that our state would just throw this blanket out there. But, you know, it makes sense if there's sales tax. Hey, let's do it. But I find it weird that they would just blanketly say, every city, every county, here's what you got to do unless you can make major findings. Well, clearly they didn't think through the repercussions of a local community such as ours or many others similar to ours. I am highly opposed to any and all of it. We have residential zones for a reason. It's where you live, and you have to have streets with right-of-way to get in there. We have industrial zones. We know what that is. And we have commercial business zones. We have very strict rules and policies and all of that to get a business into a business commercial zone. And to then just throw however many people decide that they want to sell their wares or their food or what have you, without much regulation as far as location, does not make sense to me at all. I personally, I want to see what staff comes up with. I think, you know, kind of on the
It's
same
been very
page.
helpful.
And but I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that, because in my mind, I truly believe that in almost all case, it highly affects not so much health, but safety and welfare on a number of levels in our city.
Regulate yard sales. Why would we let sidewalk vendors go exempt?
Because the legislature tells you, but there are a number of things we can do, and this is helpful, because that's the kind of information that you need to, you know, you build it brick by brick, and
yeah,
I think it's going to work.
Well, we've talked a lot about it, and I'm sure there'll be more discussion on the next round, because this is a complicated issue. So if you guys are okay, I would like to move on to the RV parking portion.
Yes, thank you. And yes, again, the feedback that you just provided is definitely beneficial for what we want to present to you in the coming months. The following item pertaining to recreational vehicles, there's a proposed version, a strike-through version of a code amendment that would essentially take any type of parking allowances out of the front yard and street side yard area. This is similar to how other cities have chose to completely prohibit RV parking in the front and our street side, but it does allow for you know, temporary parking for, you know, somebody that's getting ready to go on a camping trip or just got back, or for whatever reason they have their RV parked there for up to 72 hours, and it does allow for an additional allowance with a permit of up to 21 consecutive days. We've also provided a summary of some of the other cities down the hill. Believe in our March hearing, if I didn't mention, I'll mention to you now that, you know, the cities in the Victor Valley, Adelanto, Hesperia, and Apple Valley, they all allow for parking with, you know, some minor restrictions, like but surprisingly, Barstow does not allow for RV parking, and then there's a list of these other cities that for the most part do not allow for RV parking. Again, we just kind of went through, there's more cities if you want, you know, more of a robust list, but I kind of wanted to give you a snapshot of some of the other communities down the hill and how they regulate it, because I know it may be difficult for the commission to look at it when our neighboring cities don't restrict RV parking in the front. So just wanted to bring this for your consideration. Again, just to get feedback so we can bring forward a code amendment that's workable for the commission.
So,
just one moment, Mr. Chair, if I may interrupt. I just realized this is a continued public hearing item. So, at least that's what I thought it was on the agenda. So
yes.
we probably should have had the, I mean, since we kind of bifurcated this item, we probably should have had a public comment part for this. Is it a continued public hearing, Scott?
It is.
Ah,
It is.
okay.
Yes.
So,
I was
trying to figure out at what point we're.
It needs to be done now, or once we
Yeah,
go through these two.
Whenever, I wanted to make sure that we actually
Open it
had
up.
the public hearing.
You have some people here. Yeah.
I mean, if those are folks that are speaking during this item.
You know what? I'll just ask by a poll of hands, or yes or no. Are you folks here to speak on either of these two issues here on that, or maybe public
Or
comment
they're
at the
waiting for
end?
regular public comment?
You are. So do you have any? Well, then I'll open
Waiting for the general public comment period? Is that?
towards the end of the meeting, right? General public.
Okay, so not for the specific topic, but just, perfect, thank you.
Well, then what I'll do is I'll open up the public hearing right now formally and ask if anyone's here to speak on any of this that we're talking about on item number 4. Okay, seeing no one, then I will close the public hearing and then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, thanks for reminding. And
That's okay.
We'll continue on with the RV discussion.
Okay, my thought on this is at least in planned unit developments, there's no room for RVs. There's just most of the planned unit developments only have 20-foot long driveways, so they're going to block the sidewalk. And if they park in the street cleaner can't clean the street. The side yard, I think I'll change my prior opinion and okay for parking on the side yard if it's maybe 10 feet or more of a setback from the house structure to the property line, and it's behind a gated fence. Parking in the front yard, parking in the front driveway, parking in front of the house on the street, I think in a planned unit development should be people buying homes in planned unit developments. With that, they bring 4 cars, an RV, and all the other things they do with absolutely no room. I mean, like I said, the street cleaner isn't going to be able to do its job either. So I just think that I want to clean things up. And the 21 days I think is too long. Maybe 7. 21 days is quite a while.
That's with a permit, right?
With a permit, yeah. 72 hours without. I mean, you go camping. I have a trailer. When you get back, sometimes I don't unload and do all I got to do immediately. 72 hours, appropriate, and with a permit, I would like to see 7 days, and without being able to pull another permit behind that one. Able to just keep staying there.
Well, and looking at what was provided to us and for other cities, mainly down the hill, but it does include Barstow. The majority of the evaluation is no, 8 no's, and do not provide any parking on the front yard or the street side yard, and then only 5 yeses with restrictions that go along with kind of like with what the no's are saying. So if we follow along with maybe this guideline of mainly no, and make sure that the code provides the correct information that keeps the area clean, as far as having a recreational vehicle in the area, I think we could be okay with that. make it a no with the code enforced. Put them in the backyard, a side yard, but not obstruction to the neighbors and not obstruction on the streets. My opinion.
I think our ordinance already talks about no living in any kind of RVs currently, right?
I believe so, but not
I thought I
in
read
this
that.
code section.
I noticed it here on some of them, where they say you can go on a side yard or back behind the front plane, behind a wall, and no living,
I believe they allow it right now. It allows for parking in front of a garage door as long as you have two open garage doors. So it would only apply to a 3-car garage. But like I said, a planned unit development does not have driveways to accommodate RVs. It just doesn't. Okay, if a homeowner today wants to, let's say they are living on the corner and they want to have access for a vehicle to the rear of their yard, they can apply for a permit to get a driveway approach done on that side to gain access, but it's regulated also. It has to be ADA compliant now. You can't just put something there without.
And you're talking about when it's like a corner
Yes.
house and the side long fence. Sometimes you see people have a little driveway where they'll drive their vehicles up into the backyard.
Correct.
But yet that's still aesthetically. I mean, heck, we were having issues with people trying to do storage sheds in their backyard because they can only see how high you put big vehicles or tractor trailers or RVs or really tall boats. I mean, all these neighbors are so tight. We all look down into each other's yards, and so that's why last time I really leaned to the fact that I don't know what a solution is besides requiring staying behind the fence line or maybe the side of a house to where it's kind of tucked in but not way in the back of the lot, because I have neighbors that have big lots that, gosh, there are so many trucks and big RVs, and I think they let their friends keep them there. I don't know what goes on. But I think most people that do have RVs or the semi-trailer cabs or large construction trailers, I think these are higher ticket items, and I think these people pretty much expect that you've got to either find somewhere to store them, pay to store them, put them at a friend's place with big property way out. Those are all the things my friends and family do. And we have them, parking on the street with extension cords going into the house, and they just sit there for a long time, and we know those are probably families living street there. Unfortunately, I don't like seeing that because it's the commission has spent a lot of time with design standards on the residential houses throughout this city, and then to just put big, sometimes ugly, broken down vehicles blocking, it doesn't make sense as much. So I'm struggling with that.
I believe you can't even build a shed in your backyard that's over the fence line without complying with a setback. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, if it's
So why-
over 7 feet in height, it has to be set back a minimum of
Some of
5
these
feet.
toy haulers are 9 feet plus high. So I could just see someone's neighbor saying, "Hey, man, this guy's big old trailer is right up against the fence, obstructing my view out of my window." I'm going to be, just as a compromise, I'm going to be okay with the back of the yard, behind the fence, what have you. But front yard is just off the table for me.
Yeah, I had a friend today. I was talking about this at my office, and he lives in Spring Valley Lake, and they have homeowners association rules that any kind of motorhomes or boats or any large trailers need to be tucked in next to the house, if behind the fence line. And he told me that they allow for RVs to park on the street. And for me, I was surprised. I don't know if that's fully true or not, but I would be surprised because I have a hard time backing out of my driveway when there's say a hard time, but you can't see. It's big, parked there, and the streets aren't that wide. Any other comments on it? Scott, do you think at this point, since the last time we met, do you think, is there any way that staff might be leaning on this, or are you just still gathering information for a staff recommendation eventually?
Yeah, I think based on the feedback today, if there's anything wrong with the draft version that was presented to you, I would like to know. I think that based on the feedback I received from the majority of the commission at the March hearing, and then even more so today, I think that code like this could be presented, which would essentially not allow any type of RV parking in the front yard or street side yard area. It would allow it in the side and rear yard area if it's behind a fence of at least 5 feet in height.
One other thing, and I'm talking about planned unit development. I mean, if somebody's on a half acre, I believe Larry lives on a big. But so there is going to be some exemption for the large lot. Now, we don't have a lot of lots like that here in Victorville.
We do have an area that's zoned for half-acre lots. We do have a couple of those throughout the city.
North side?
Actually, yeah, there's a portion that's kind of on the northern end that it has larger lots, but it's actually not zoned for minimum size. But we could designate it that, you know, if the lots over a half acre gross qualify for some exemption.
If they have it 100 feet off the property line or the front of the property, if they have that kind of room, then I don't have, there's
what I'm hearing is maybe some leniency for the larger lots, as long as there's a certain setback and they're not like right up against the property line. Line of sight would still be.
I'm not against motorhomes. If you've got room to park it, that we need to have a way that allow them park it. You know, but 7,200 square foot lot, typical neighborhood. It's kind of messy and it's a little tough. Thank you for putting this information together so we could compare and contrast with the other cities. That's helpful.
And thank you for the feedback.
Okay, so then I'll go ahead and make the motion to continue this item to the August 14th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting.
We have a motion by Chair Kurth with a second by Vice Chair Marsh to keep are you keeping the public hearing open?
I'm supposed to, right?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, public hearing is still open.
We have a motion by Chair Kurth and with a second by Vice Chair Marsh to keep the public hearing open and continue case PLAN 19-00013 to the August 14, 2019 regular Planning Commission meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. In compliance with the Brown Act, it's necessary for the Planning Commission to make available time for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on items of interest that fall within our subject matter jurisdiction. Time length of 3 minutes. Anyone here to speak to us? Nope. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? That's it. Any reports from commissioner members? I'll start with Commissioner Wells.
No, I have nothing to report.
I have nothing.
Okay, I have I have an issue with the post office. I've been driving by the post office and it is dead. There's no landscape whatsoever. It looks just like the old Walmart. There's there's no landscape whatsoever. Anything there is dead. If you go to the post office in Hesperia, it's beautiful with trees, landscape. Ours looks bad, really bad. So if we could check into that, and I don't know if the federal government is exempt from the rules or how that goes, but I'd like to find out what's going on there.
Any comments from staff members?
Not today, thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. I'll call this meeting adjourned.